Hello and welcome to The Lucky Roll, an eclectic channel for eclectic games. And today we're reviewing Boru, High King of Ireland by Osprey Games and designed by Pierre Sylvester. Boru is an area control, card drafting, hand management, trick-taking game in which players compete to control the most towns in various regions, which are areas in medieval Ireland, in order to garner the most victory points. It's set during the early 1000s, during the life of real-life High King, or as we say in Irish, Ard Rí Boru, a famous Irish hero whose army defeated the Vikings at the Battle of Clontarf in 1014. It was such a decisive victory that it quelled Viking raids in Europe for the next few decades. In this game, you compete for control of various provinces in Ireland by taking and holding the most towns within that province. However, even if you gain control of a province, it's still possible to lose it. Control can be lost if another player takes more territory than you, if another player increases a town's importance by building a monastery, or, God forbid, Vikings seize one of your towns and take over so no one controls it. Other mechanisms within this game are competing for political marriages, which give players advantages depending on the person married, gaining renown tokens by fighting Vikings, and building monasteries in Ireland in order to extend your influence throughout the county. A typical game round consists of players competing for control of a town by submitting one card from their hand at a time in a series of tricks until all players only have one card left. The towns are coloured blue, red and yellow, and depending on the colour of the town, the person declaring which town must be competed over must play a card of the same colour as that town. Each action card has multiple signifiers on it, and cards are resolved in ascending order by numbers in the top left corner of the card, but control of the town itself is only given to the player whose card colour matches the colour of the town. A blue card with a score of 24, example, does not take control of a red town. It's the player with the highest scoring red card that takes control in that case. This is also the player that selects the next town for players to compete over, with the added advantage that they can pick a town colour that suits their deck. Players that take control of a town resolve the top part of the card, whereas all other players resolve their choice of the bottom parts of the cards instead. This can be useful as players may not necessarily want to focus on the town, as the powers on the bottom half of the card can vary from giving a player income, advancing their tokens on the marriage track, building up their token score for fighting Vikings, or helping them get renown and building monasteries. After all cards from a player's hand have been played and the tricks completed, the round ends and the end round phase status is resolved. If a player has claimed enough towns to dominate a province, they take the token for the resulting province. If a player has lost control of a province, they pass the token to the controlling player. The player furthest up the marriage track gets a political marriage. The player who's contributed the most tokens to battling Vikings gets renown, which translates into victory points at the end of the game. And the player who's contributed the most tokens to the monasteries gets to build a monastery and selects the next town for players to compete for control of. It's a straightforward game, but it has some very interesting variances that ensure fair play, such as the players who finish top of the track for marriages have their positions reset for the next round, whereas the players that come second or third or whatnot do not. Tokens contributed to fighting Vikings or building monasteries are only returned to the player who won that round. All other players lose one token from the tally, but retain the rest so that they have an added advantage for the next round. Fighting Vikings also has some very interesting variances, in that the player who contributed the most to the fighting dictates which town is taken over for the player who contributed the least. They also collect a renown token, and for every renown token that player already has, they advance one victory point on the scoreboard. So players can effectively stack their renown for successive victory points each round and sabotage victory points for other players who are focusing solely on controlling towns. Finally, the monasteries are a great way of doubling your control of certain provinces. However, this can backfire because if a Viking token is placed upon a monastery town, the controlling player effectively loses 2 influence points. The final political marriage in the game is with Princess Estrid, who is allied with the Vikings and is a great way to steal victory at the last point in the game, as she allows you to either count Viking towns as controlled, take advantage of an in-game victory condition where player presence in multiple provinces adds victory points, as Viking towns will count as presence for the player allied with Estrid, or she can be simply sacrificed or spurned for a straight up 4 victory points. And once that marriage is complete, the game is over. So, the review part. Well, before I give my thoughts, I have to come clean in that I am naturally biased in favour of this game because it's set in Ireland and focuses on a legendary character from Irish history. I also have to compliment Pierre Sylvester for how thematic his game is with this period of Irish history. Brian Boru was the first High King Ordry of Ireland that didn't come from the O'Neill provinces, and one of the reasons he managed to successfully break the tradition was because he focused on establishing Armagh as the capital of Christianity in Ireland and allowing the northern part of the country to retain significant influence. By using the establishment of monasteries as a way of doubling up influences in towns was a lovely little nod to history that I did not expect in this game. The game also reminded me of a famous Irish card game called 45, where the term tricks is also used. This is a game where players are dealt 5 cards. They play 1 card each round that vary in power depending on the trump suit in play. Whichever player wins the trick leads the next trick, and each trick is worth 5 points, and the first to 45 wins. The tricks in this game are similar in that the town colour dictates the power of the cards in play, and that the player who wins the trick selects the next town to be controlled. The aesthetics of the game are also beautiful, with Celtic artwork, Irish characters such as Aoife and Cormac amongst the marriages, pictures of Irish wolfhounds and tonsured monks, and old province names such as the Southern O'Neill and Northern O'Neill, showing the makeup of Ireland before it evolved into the 4 classic provinces of Munster, Connacht, Leinster and Ulster now. As an Irishman, it was a real joy to play this game with my friends, and it led to some great conversations about Irish history, trying to take over the various towns where we all hailed from, laughing about old county rivalries, and noting with an amusing irony that of all the provinces that were most contested in this game, it was usually the Ulster O'Neill territories that ended up being fought over the most. The simple mechanics of the game allow for the easy flow of conversation, but the strategy is varied and interesting enough that players won't lose focus either. The turn of a trick against you can most certainly force a change of plans at the last second, and the board, being so big, bright and colourful, lends itself to being able to guess other players' strategies very well and trying to sabotage or outcompete with them in various areas. The game itself is light enough in its mechanics and varied enough in its player options that you are guaranteed a good time with this game due to its high player turnover rate, as the more cards you play in a round, the less choice you have, and analysis paralysis becomes less of a problem as your options dwindle. That's not to say that the game doesn't provoke deep thought or scheming, but it does have a very good pace of play, and players are not left waiting long to make their moves. This is a medium weight game with very straightforward mechanics but surprising variability in its play. The punishing the round winner aspect in fighting Vikings and building monasteries to me is very innovative, as it stops players from spamming those 2 gamepads, and the tricks that I described earlier are further complicated by wild cards, which are coloured white, which allows players to steal a trick more often than you may expect, especially if the player hand is dwindling. If you feel like an in-depth area control game strategy that's like Game of Thrones, but don't have the time, Brian Boru is a great way to scratch that itch in a way that's very friendly to new players, with a nice added nod to a real hero from Irish history. Until next time, this is Sean from The Lucky Roll. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, all that good YouTube stuff. And until next time, good luck, God bless, and all hail Ordinary Brian Boru. Whenever you're good.
So we got 3 cameras rolling.
3? Jesus, fair play.
Okay.
Could you hear that Diet Coke can?
No.
Card drafting, hand management, trick-taking game in which players.
It's alright.
If a player has lost control of a province, they pass the token to the controlling player. The player further. Shit. Okay, we're getting through it.
Flying.
Other mechanisms. Blah. Shit.
Start it there, that's grand.
So we'll go from other mechanisms.
Yeah, I think so.
It's a game that provokes great banter for Irish people every time you take it out.
Do that bit, right?
That was going well up to that point. Brian Boru is a great way to scratch that itch in a new, very player-friendly way, with a nice added nod to a real history.
Bam.
Don't worry. There we go. That's it. Until next time, this is Sean from The Lucky Roll. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, all that good YouTube stuff. And until next time, God bless. God bless. Jesus.
Good bless. Let's go back again.
Good luck. God bless. And all hail Ordinary Brian Boru.
Let's start. We'll go again, so the last line is going to kill us.
If you feel like an in-depth area control game strategy, like Game of Thrones, but don't have the time, Brian Boru is a great way to scratch that itch in a very new player way that's friendly. Ah, Jesus Christ.
You're having a major meltdown on this one. It's fun to watch, though.
It's just like the last hurdle, like feeling on it, like.
Ready?
If you feel like an in-depth area control game strategy, like Game of Thrones, but don't have the time, Brian Boru is a great way to scratch that itch in a very new player way. Jesus Christ, in a new...
It's getting worse.
In a friendly new player...
I think it's actually getting worse. I mean, I think we have the paragraph somewhere back. We'll just try and get it nice and neat.
Yeah,
right?
Sorry.
Take your time now and relax. We might do that last.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind doing that last bit again as well. Yep,
Okay.
Perfect, yep.